Yeah.
Mike's on? All right. Would like to call to order the September 3rd, 2024 Columbia Borough Council Workshop. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilperson Kaufman,
Here.
Councilperson Stahl,
Here.
Councilperson Fisher. Here. Council President Zink,
Here.
Councilperson Bergard, Councilperson Murphy.
Here.
Councilperson Price. Mayor Lutz.
Here.
All right. Would anybody like to offer an invocation? If you'd like, please rise for a moment of silence. Mayor Lutz, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcement of executive session on August 27th. At the conclusion of the regular meeting, there was an executive session to discuss personnel matters related to replacing staff. Are there any additions, deletions, or reorganization of the agenda needed? I'm not aware of anything. No. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as published?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman, second by Councilperson Stahl, to approve the agenda as published. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Citizen comment, non-agenda items only. I don't have the sign-up sheet. Is there anyone that would like to address council on non-agenda items? Yes, Frank.
Actually, Heather, I forgot to sign in anyway.
Oh, that's all right.
Are you going to do this every week?
Yeah, I do. I like to ask because sometimes people don't know they can sign up, so.
So we really don't have to sign in it, but I like that. It works out good. I'd like to ask Jack where we stand with the kids that did the damage up on Bridge Avenue.
We mean by where we stand.
Where are we at with it? Anybody prosecuted?
Charges were filed, yes,
Or did it file?
yes. I don't have any updates on
So,
it, yes.
Okay. And then I guess the other thing, I was wondering, where we're at on the borough manager. Any news, are we interviewing?
We're actively interviewing.
We are, okay.
Yes.
Narrow it down how many?
A couple.
Couple could be a lot.
It's not a lot.
Thanks anyway.
All right. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on non-agenda items that has not signed up? Mayor Lutz, Chief Bronner.
I have nothing. I don't have any.
All right.
I think
Our,
the gentleman in the back with the sunglasses on.
I
oh,
don't know. If
I'm sorry.
I didn't sign in or anything.
Okay.
He drive, I don't know. I spoke with, I think you drive the truck behind the street sweeper every now and then. I don't know. Look familiar, but anyway, the trash cans on the 400 block of Locust Street, they were taken out years ago and they were never replaced. And there's tons of garbage up there all the time, you know. There's, you know, the pizza shops there, you know, the barber shops and stuff like that. It's considered a business district, you know. I was just wondering when they were gonna be replaced. It's been years.
Yes.
Yes, they were taken out. The reason they were taken out is, as you can see if you walk downtown today, the trash cans are constantly being filled with residential trash.
Okay,
And everyone that resides in an apartment or home along the business district should have a hauler and be putting their trash in the back.
you're correct.
So in order to stop some of that problem, some of them were taken out.
Right, Well, I was told when I have a property on Locust Street, and I had the same problem with other people putting their trash in my dumpster. And I was told by the police department that I should find an address with a name on it, and they would be cited for theft of services. So why hasn't the borough done that to the public trash cans?
We have,
We do.
and people have been cited. But it's a constant thing, and if you look at Fourth and Locust right now, you probably see that trash cans filled. If you look down here on 200 block, you'll see that trash cans full. So we're working on that issue, and I think there may be some discussion on some of that.
Why I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mary Wickenheiser.
Mary Wickenheiser, I wasn't gonna say anything, but as a follow-up to this gentleman's comment about 400 block of Oaks. There are times that I walk down there, I would pick trash up, but I've got nowhere to go with it. And I'm not carrying it another block, so I leave it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. At this time, at 7:06 PM, we are exiting the regular Borough Council workshop. At 7:07 PM, we are entering the hearing, the public hearing, to discuss the conditional use request for 750 South Ninth Street. First question, has this hearing been duly advertised and posted?
It has, yes.
Okay. Now,
All right, would you like me to go ahead and,
please go ahead, because I know we also have the stenographer, so I'm not quite sure what we need to
yes,
do here.
no, I will go ahead. Josh, if you would like to go ahead and you guys can present your case and then we'll go from there.
Good evening. My name is Eli King, and I just want to thank y'all for providing us the time and the opportunity to present our proposal here tonight for the project at 750 South 9th Street. And as some of you are aware, we were here at a prior hearing on August 15th, and unfortunately that hearing was not publicly advertised due to an omission, I'm assuming from not having a current borough manager. And so therefore, at that point, we could have been deemed or granted deemed approval. That's essentially approval by default. However, we did not believe that bypassing the public's right to attending a borough council meeting regarding the project would meet the high standard of professionalism to which we adhere in our work. We also believe this opinion to be mutual and shared by the borough. We also believe that they likewise strive to do their work in a professional manner, and given those circumstances, we believe it would be in the best interest of all parties to schedule a new hearing, which is why we're here tonight. So moving on from that, I'm going to share a little bit of the timeline of events here on the project. For anyone that's heard it before, I just ask that you be patient with me. We're going to go through this in some detail, given that there may be some people here who haven't heard the project before. So in March of 2023, Columbia Borough sold me the property at 750 South 9th Street. Soon after, my team and I commenced on project design that meets the medium density residential zoning requirements with the flexible residential development option. We commenced to do due diligence on utilities, where they're available, what we would have to do to connect to them, and a lot of other technical details. Through that, we came up with a few designs for which we could choose from. Further down the road, we had a staff meeting with the borough officials in October of 2023. This is a requirement to any new building project application, is that there be a pre-application meeting with the borough officials. So we had that, had a great discussion at that time. We took those recommendations and preferences that they had shared with us into account and further refined our design and plans. Also continued after that meeting refining the land development plan, which was quite extensive at that point. They shared some pretty good thoughts that we were able to build off of, specifically regarding to the proposed project across the street that the borough is working on. So from there, we commenced to do soil testing to gain further clarity on the stormwater management options and capabilities, and moving on into our second borough staff meeting in May of 2024. So we had a second meeting, given there were a lot of developments and still some issues that needed to be addressed. And so we felt it appropriate to have a second borough staff meeting, which we had in May of 2024. Soon after that, we submitted this application in June for our project. We then had a planning commission hearing July 16th, where we had a very lively discussion, and a lot of thoughts and questions were shared, and great discussion was had there. In the conclusion of that meeting, we had the planning commission made a unanimous motion to recommend the borough council would grant approval for this project, including granting the 2 waiver requests whereby we had requested relief, specifically the trees and the single lot request. On August 13th, we had a borough council meeting. There, the borough council agreed with us that our project largely meets or exceeds the minimum medium density residential zoning requirements with the flexible residential development option. Council further agreed that the 2 waiver requests were a reasonable ask, given the alternative outcomes that we had shared with them. And as a result, council unanimously voted to grant conditional use approval to the project. As I mentioned prior, unfortunately, due to the advertising omission, the decision was rendered unofficial due to the hearing not being publicly advertised. Then we chose, rather than proceeding with deemed approval, which would have been our right, we chose rather to immediately reschedule a new hearing, allowing it to be publicly and properly advertised, which brings us here tonight. So moving on, I'm going to spend some time here on the project introduction and why we're here tonight. So what we're doing here tonight is we submitted an application for the building project at 750 South 9th Street, and we are here to present the plan and to seek Borough Council conditional use approval for the project at 750 South 9th Street as per the application. And in addition, we are asking for 2 waiver relief requests. So I have an extra copy here of the plan if any of the residents are interested in looking at it to follow along. Anybody here on the plan or so just to kind of follow along a little bit. So this lot is in the medium density residential zoning district. And we designed the project with the zoning requirements in mind. And we are utilizing the flexible residential zoning option here, which is permitted to be used in this zoning district. Our proposed project has 9 townhomes As you can see here, there will be two buildings. The one has 5 townhomes, and the other has 4 townhomes. And these townhomes are designed with either 2 or 3 bedrooms and either 2 or 3 bathrooms. As I mentioned earlier, this project was designed to meet or exceed the minimum requirements in the MDR district, utilizing the FRD option. And so I'm going to just quote a few of those elements that are permitted by right here under the flexible residential zoning option. One of them here is to permit reasonable adjustments to certain standards and dimensional requirements to encourage design innovations and creativity. Section 220-27A1. Another one is to ensure that infill development, which this is compatible with adjacent existing buildings. Section 220-27A2. And we designed this with that in mind, like I mentioned. If you go down Manor Street, you go down Plain Street, any of the adjoining streets, you'll notice a lot of brothers, also known as townhomes. So we designed that to meet that criteria. Another point that I want to share with regards to the flexible residential zoning option is to provide an option that would allow the efficient use of lots with unusual lot lines. And so that is a point that we were well aware of when we designed the lot layout. So each residence here has individually unique architectural elements, such as alternating siding colors and roof gables, etc. As you can see here, you're not going to walk up to the building and inadvertently walk into your neighbor's house because it's all the same color or whatever. We have clear distinctions from one townhome to the next. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons being is my personal preference, but then another one was as a result of the pre-application meetings that we had with the borough staff. They specifically said, don't bring us a big office. And we weren't necessarily going to anyway, but we took that ask into consideration as we designed this plan. So in addition to that, you will see that on the 5 townhome building, the gable facing 9th Street has a front porch element, and the front door comes out facing 9th Street. That was also a specific design that we had feedback from the borough staff meeting, and that we were able to incorporate into coming up with a really good design. Furthermore, there will be a firewall between each townhome, meeting current code requirements. Sprinkler systems will be installed in each unit, also meeting current code requirements. At this time, I'd like to invite Josh up to share a little bit how we have designed this project to meet or exceed a large list of minimum zoning requirements.
Good evening. My name is Joshua George. I'm with Landworks Civil Design. We are a civil engineering and land planning consulting firm. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So as Eli said, he's asked me to go through the zoning criteria this evening, specifically related to the flexible residential development requirements that are outlined in the borough's zoning ordinance. We didn't go into excruciating detail last time, but we are going to tonight, just so we have something for our stenographer to do tonight, because we like to make sure she's got everything down in a neat and orderly way so that everybody can read it after the hearing is over. As Eli said, the proposed project is at the intersection of South 9th Street and Avenue X. All of the proposed townhomes will face Avenue X, and access for vehicles will be in the rear of all of the units at a surface parking lot. There are 9 proposed townhomes. There are 19 proposed parking spaces, so slightly more than 2 spaces per unit. We are meeting the parking requirements of the borough. We are also providing dumpsters for trash collection in the back. We hope that they will be used exclusively by our residents and not necessarily everybody who happens to live within a few homes of the property, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The specific conditions that I want to go through are those outlined in section 220-27 of the borough's zoning ordinance. Those are specifically the criteria related to the flexible residential development. Now, as Eli said, this property is located in the medium density residential zone, and townhouses by themselves are permitted by right in the MDR zone. We are proposing townhouses. However, we are using the flexible residential development for all of the reasons that Eli already outlined. So with that said, I will briefly run through these just to make sure we get them on the record. Starting with section 220-27, letter D, the property consists of 20,635 square feet, which exceeds the minimum requirement of 2,400 square feet. Next, section 220-27, letter E, number 1, the applicant intends to construct townhomes, which are allowed as a flexible residential development option by that specific section of the zoning ordinance. Next, section 220-27E2. This section requires that each dwelling unit be on its own fee simple lot or within a condominium. This is one of the items, one of the 2, that we are requesting a modification from. You heard a lot of detail about that at your last meeting. But the point of that is we would like all of the townhomes to be on a single lot. The primary reason is because it creates one opportunity for you as the borough to have somebody to contact, that being Eli. Should there be any problems, you can go to one person to hear all of any problems that might come up. Everybody on that property would be owned, everything on that property would be owned by Eli, and you would have one point of contact. Next item is section 220-27E3. That section prohibits mobile homes. Obviously, we are not using mobile homes here. Next, section 220-27F. Section F1 provides that not more than 1 dwelling unit per 1,500 square feet of property is allowed. Our average is approximately 1 dwelling unit per 2,293 square feet. So we're about 800 square feet over the requirement. Next is section 220-27F, number 2, provides that each dwelling unit must have a minimum building width of 15 feet. All of our proposed units will be 20 feet wide, so we will exceed that requirement. Next, section 220-27F3 requires that each unit will have a minimum of 200 square feet of outdoor private area. These units will have a combination of both outdoor area in the front of the units on porches, and then also in the back on patios or decks. And the combination of the area in the front and the area in the back will exceed 200 square feet per unit. The average is approximately 220 square feet per unit with the proposal in front of you. Next item, 220-27F4, provides the structure shall provide a safe sight distance at intersections of streets and alleys. If you're familiar with the property, all of our units are set back from the intersection of South 9th Street and Avenue X to make sure that we can maintain clear sight lines at that intersection. And there will be no structures or landscaping proposed within the clear sight lines at that intersection. Next, section 220-27F5 requires a 5-foot minimum setback from side and rear lot lines. Our closest units are 5 feet from the side property line, and we are actually 50 feet to the rear property line because of our parking in the back. So we meet or exceed the setback requirements. Next, section 220-27F6 requires a 5-foot minimum setback between detached dwellings. As you heard, there are two buildings here. One building has 4 units, one building has 5 units. They are separated by 10 feet, so they exceed the minimum by 5 feet, or double what the requirement is. Next, section 220-27F7 requires suitable, perpetually guaranteed access to a public street. And we have suitable, perpetually provided access to a public street through our parking lot in the rear of the building. That will be connected to South 9th Street. Next, section 220-27F number 8 provides that a sidewalk is required along each public street, which we are providing, and an average of 1 deciduous shade tree be planted along each 40 feet of adjacent public street right of way. We are providing the street trees on South 9th Street where there's physically space to do that. However, along Avenue X, because of the front setback requirement is 0, there's no room to put the trees along Avenue X. So we have 2 options. We can either cram them together on South 9th Street, which we don't really think is the best choice, or we can put as many as reasonably will fit on South 9th and perhaps provide a few others in somewhere else that makes sense. We can discuss that with Borough Council or Borough Staff. So that is our second of the 2 modification requests. Next, section 227F9 requires that at least 20% of the total land area not contained within public rights-of-way be maintained as landscaped areas. As shown on the plans that were submitted with the application, the open space is 22.4%, so we're about 10% over that requirement. Next, section 220-27F number 10 provides that no more than 50% of the total land area not contained within public right-of-way be covered by buildings. Our building coverage is approximately 30.4%, so we're about 20% to the good on that requirement. Next, we move on to section 220-27 letter G. Number 1 applies to the demolition of historically significant buildings. As you're probably aware, there are no buildings on this property, so that section does not apply. Next is section 220-27G, number 2. That provides that the scale, character, and design of the development shall be compatible with existing buildings. Eli already testified to that fact in his testimony. I won't belabor the point. We believe that we very clearly meet that requirement. Next, item 220-27G3 requires fire-resistant construction. As you heard, we will have the necessary firewalls between all of the units to comply with the building codes. Next, section 220-27G4 provides that the development shall minimize the visual prominence of driveways and vehicle parking. We very intentionally did that to the rear of the units so that that is as hidden as it can be. So all of the parking and vehicle access is to the rear. It's buffered by the buildings from Avenue X. And then, of course, to the rear of our property, there is no alley, so it's buffered by the back of the neighboring property to the rear. I'm almost done, I promise. Section 220-27G5 requires the development to include substantial landscaping. In addition to the street trees that I already mentioned, we are doing smaller shrubs and plantings. That will be much more detailed in our land development plan, which, if you approve the conditional use, we will follow this process with the land development plan. Next would be item 220-27G number 6 that requires suitable measures of attractive design and landscaping for enjoyment and privacy of residents and neighboring residents. I just mentioned that we are providing landscaping. It's a very similar requirement between the 2 sections. Next, number 220-27G number 7 requires new common driveways to be constructed to accommodate 2-way traffic and in no event be narrower than 10 feet. As previously mentioned, our access to the rear is 2-way. It's both an inbound and an outbound lane from our parking area. That would be a minimum of 22 feet wide, well over the minimum of 10 that's required by the zoning ordinance. Next, item 220-27G number 8 addresses constructing common driveways to minimize future repairs and expenses to the borough. As I just mentioned, we are doing that with our shared common parking area. Last section, section 220-27 letter H. Each number 1 requires that mailboxes be constructed in a manner that minimizes the visual impact with a preference for cluster mailboxes. We do intend to use a cluster mailbox for this particular development. And finally, section 220-27H number 2 provides that dumpsters shall be located to minimize their visual impact. And as was indicated on the plan that accompanied the application, we are providing a screened enclosure for our dumpsters. to try to minimize their impact visually as best we can, while still maintaining access for the trash hauler to come in and put those dumpsters and back out the property appropriately. So having said all of that, those are the specific criteria in section 220-27 related to flexible residential development. We believe our project complies or exceeds all of those requirements, and we requested 2 modifications of those requirements as noted.
All right, so moving on, for further details on the project. The interior finishes for the townhomes, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom townhomes, and each will have either 2 or 3 baths. There are several different designs there. Each townhome will have a laundry room with a washer and dryer provided. We're going to be installing a luxury vinyl plank throughout both the first and second floors of each home. Also, we're going to be installing modern kitchen cabinets with self-closed drawers, complete with granite countertops, and of course, new appliances, tile backsplash, and lots of other features that will complement the project well. I just want to make a comment here with the lot line request. So we put a lot of thought into the project as a whole, and we believe the lot line relief that we're asking for is a reasonable ask. And I'm just going to note a couple of those thought processes here. One of them is we're not technically asking for a change to the lot itself. It is currently 1 lot. We're not adding other lots to it or taking other lots apart. It currently is 1 lot. We're just asking that stays the same. As Josh mentioned, being aware that it is a modification from the townhome individual lot requirement. The other one, and this is a continuation of this was discussed at a prior meeting, including in the planning commission meeting as well, and even further back to our pre-application for a staff meeting, is that the end result being that it would have no practical effect. And what that means to the public here is that if the lot line request waiver were for some reason not granted, at that point we would have the option to create an HOA and do individual deeds, which we would then do and maintain ownership of all the units. With that, I will note that we studied the zoning extensively, and it makes no distinction between homeowners versus rentals. And I say that because there is a large portion of Americans these days that will intentionally never own a home. They choose to rent, and they have every opportunity and right to modern and brand new homes, the same as any other American. Also, another comment with that lot line waiver request is the fact that there are very few building projects that get completed without 1 or 2 waivers. And one recent example right here in the borough is a project that was just completed, 237 through 245 South 5th Street. That was a situation that, as I'm sure you all are aware, was a blighted property situation and was purchased by, I believe, Habitat for Humanity or the land bank, something of the sort. And there was a situation where the applicant felt the highest and best use of the project was to create 4 townhomes instead of, I believe, the 2 that were there. And so they designed a project, but it needed a waiver, a pretty significant one. And that specifically was the parking arrangement. So each new project would require 2 off-street parking requirements or 2 off-street parking spaces. There was no way that this would meet that. So what happened was what I thought was a really common sense, practical approach. They looked at it and they said, we can create a solution for that, which I thought they did a great job. They created off-street parking in the rear of the adjoining lots, and then just created a common easement to that. I was working on 432 Avenue N over that time. We were doing a complete renovation, and I would look up at that building project, and I would get all excited because I see that as good progress to the borough to have, those 4 brand new townhomes there, as opposed to, should I just say the other project that was there prior, complete with the weeds and so forth. So I just see this as a great example of practical common sense being applied and furthering progress in the borough. Then in addition, there was a second waiver that was approved there, specifically a pedestrian easement that is required by zoning to be 10 feet, and the applicant requests relief, and that be permitted to be 7 feet, which of course was granted. So that being said, waiver relief, asking for waiver relief is not uncommon and is also not unreasonable. So with comment to the tree waiver relief that I'm asking, I'm just going to point out that there are no trees on the lot now. We're actually going to be adding trees. So I see that as a win for the borough and getting 5 trees that aren't there now. Some closing comments here. It would be my hope that Borough Council likes our project. However, if for some reason you wouldn't, we would just ask you to consider that we did design this project to meet or exceed a long list of minimum zoning requirements, with only 2 exceptions, which I feel for the work that we put in here is the 2 exceptions I feel is a very reasonable and minimal ask. With that said, I thank you again for your time and attention.
Does anyone on Borough Council have any questions or comments, either for the applicant or just in general? Mayor?
Yeah, there was a lot of testimony given, okay? So just to wrap it up real small and possibly form a motion, you were asking for an unconditional use.
We're asking for conditional use.
Conditional use with 2 waivers.
With 2 waivers.
Could you state the 2 waivers? I mean, I heard them, but I'd like to hear, okay, conditional use with 2 waivers. So it's cut and dry.
Sure, yeah, I'll wrap this up with a bow on top, which is we are asking for your approval of a conditional use application. A conditional use is a use permitted by right, provided that we meet the conditions. Our testimony indicated that we met all of the conditions with the exception of the 2 modification requests. Those are section 220-27E, number 2, which is all of the units on 1 lot, and then section 220-27F, number 8, which is the location of the required street.
Thank you. And I know you'll work with planning commission. The trees are near and dear to me, and I know you'll work with them. One question in my mind: are all your utilities going to be underground?
That is the plan.
Absolutely, provided that they can be provided that way by the respective utility providers.
Because you have such a beautiful project. I hate to see cable wires and everything else hanging off of it, and then as tenants may change, we wind up with 2 or 3 dishes on the roofs and things like that.
Have to be in mind myself.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I had a question. Will the property maintenance, lawn care, everything be done by the landowner yourself?
That would
Or will
be-
their tenants be required to be involved there?
So the tenants will have no responsibility, that will be handled by the professional property management, which will have in place there. And there is, as you may have been aware, currently a professional landscaper that provides lawn care to the project. Our plan is to have them continue. They do weekly mowing, and as I'm sure you noticed, I haven't made it into a hayfield or something. We have maintained lawn care there. They will also, Stronghold Property Services will also do biannual shrub trimming as well as tree trimming as needed. Generally, that's done on a spring cleanup schedule.
Thank you.
About snow removal.
The same thing, it will be done by professional.
Yeah, by landscaper.
Yes.
Eric, go ahead if you have a question.
So I asked this the last meeting, but I just wanted to clarify. The splitting up the lot into parcels, separate parcels, if we didn't approve that, you can still build an apartment unit on that property, correct?
In looking at the zoning, I do not believe an apartment complex would be, but he could absolutely build townhomes or any, he could just do what he's planning to do here. Whether or not it's one, that's what he testified to, and I think that's correct. Whether it's one lot or whether it's 9 lots in this situation, it wouldn't make a difference in your
Okay.
ordinance. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you'd still be able to do the same thing.
Further comment I'll make on that is that current zoning does permit for 13 dwellings, and we are on 9, specifically for the reason we believe that will create a higher quality home for each.
Does anyone else have any comments up here?
No, but we did receive one letter. And I believe we should read that into the record. Even though the person is not here. Council was, oh no, I can't get it back.
I have it here if you'd like me to read it.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Council was provided with this letter, but I will read it. I'm not saying that it's all accurate because there's several statements in here that are inaccurate, but it's important that we make this part of the record. This says the homeowners located at 626 Manor Street, Columbia, PA 17512 are in favor of not changing the application for 750 South 9th Street. The reasons for not letting the application change: 1, there are 2 750 South 9th Streets at the time of the letter, and that is accurate. For whatever reason, part of the McGinnis parcel was 750 South 9th, and so was this parcel. They are both, they both have the same address number, but they are different parcel numbers. So, says number 2, you somehow sent the notice to 626 Manor Street with it dated August 27th, 2024. Was this the original notice or a second notice that leaves less than a week to gather info? Number 3, the lot behind this property, the lot behind, which is this property that we're talking about, is only 3/4 of an acre. Number 4, the developer wants to build 9 townhouses and 18 parking. The original zoning would only let him or her build about 3 or 4. Number 5, are these townhouses buy or rented? 6, are they going to have government subsidies? 7, section 8? 8, does this developer have any other properties in Columbia? 9, his track record for landlordship. 10, the traffic behind 626 Manor Street will increase. 11, the private alley between 626 and 628 Manor Street will be turned into a road by the location of these townhouses. We already have problems with running through. 12, my side door opens into the private alley. 13, the property at 626 Manor Street has a backyard. We already have overnight parking. We don't need more. 14, we already have an excess of dog in our backyard and alley. We don't need more. 15, if these homes are government subsidies, why does Borough Council want government involved in this situation? Government has a track record for wasting money. The property owners of 626 Manor Street, Columbia, PA 17512, have 30 years of experience with neighbors in the area and have spent a considerable amount of money in the upkeep of this property and are hoping, since we have time and money invested and just retired, the Borough Council will not make us move because they know more about being a neighbor. We hope the Borough Council will take this notice and letter and sleep on it. Hope I am not writing this in vain. Rumor has it this item is already a done thing, although individual written notice is not required by the Borough of Columbia, is sending this notice as a courtesy. We will see. To be continued. All info is what we could find with the time we had. Remember, rumors are two-sided. We do not have the access to public info, but we try. Hope we do not have to move because of future problems. Ralph Englert.
That second to,
Make a comment?
sorry, that second to last sentence was, we do not have access to private info.
Oh, private
Not
info.
public.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, if you would like to address it, I think we all know the things that were incorrect in there.
So the comment I would like to make regarding the letter is that if the residents of 626 Manor Street would have chosen to be at this public meeting tonight, they would have had the opportunity to realize a large portion of their concerns are unfounded. I would also have been happy to have further dialogue with regards to concerns that they would have felt might not have been addressed here tonight. As I think we all know, this is the intent of a public hearing, is to create an opportunity for dialogue and discussion and to further understanding amongst all parties.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Frank, we'll get you after
Yep, we'll
Mary.
get you Frank after Mary.
I want to let the public speak first.
We're the public too.
Okay, Mary Wickenheiser, Chair, Columbia Borough Planning Commission. Just to reiterate that this was reviewed by Borough Planning Commission and that as zoning requires, this was to be a recommendation to council for their approval or disapproval. And that at that meeting, after extensive discussion, the unanimous motion from the Planning Commission was to recommend a conditional use approval with the waiver requested for maintaining it as a single lot and for the number of trees to be planted. And I think we all felt that this was a terrific project being brought to us, that it's going to advance, it's going to make that area a better place. We're really looking forward to this, moving forward to having them come back with more detail to get a final plan approval that they can begin this work out there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. Frank?
Frank Delford. Frank Delford. Satisfy my curiosity. The reason this hearing is coming before council is because waivers or variances has to be voted on.
No,
No.
no.
What is the main reason?
It's coming before council because the municipal planning code, the MPC, says that if a special, if a conditional use is requested, that it must be heard by the governing body.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. And my one question on the project, was there any talk of charging stations for electric cars?
We have not had any discussions surrounding that. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think there's any laws governing that, but we're trying to look ahead. Other places I've seen it go, I always try to bring it up to the people's building, but they don't want to listen to me. I didn't know if you just talked about it or not.
I can't remember if we-
Okay, thank you. I know there's no requirement, but thanks.
Frank, one thing with the parking area, I think they brought it, they mentioned it last time, but if not, it'll serve as a reminder. Because of the size of it, they will have to comply with ADA and the number of handicap parking spaces and so forth, and they will be doing that.
Yes, that too. Which part of this complex faces South Ninth?
The side,
For left.
It would be the
For
left, the left side,
The left side,
and then the gable would be facing Lake Street.
okay. Thank you much.
I just wanted to ask about the doubling up of 750 South 9th.
yeah.
Since that was brought up, what are the details on that?
I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about that. I knew that there were some issues with like addresses just because McGinnis was put together from 7 or 8 parcels. But that will all be taken care of here in relatively short order once we get the subdivision, the reverse subdivision plan that makes the rest of the McGinnis parcels one parcel.
So the second 750 will disappear.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's like one square that's the 700 Franklin Street,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
and it's surrounded by 950 South 9th, but that's the odd side of the street, not the
Right.
even side. So it's very confusing.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right.
At this time, you can close the hearing. then.
Okay. At this time then, hearing no further discussion, at 7:53 PM, I will close the official hearing for the conditional use. At 7:53 PM, we are reopening the regular Borough Council workshop. Now, our first action item, well, the only action item tonight, is, does anyone have a motion to approve the conditional use request for 750 South 9th Street with the 2 variances requested?
Waivers.
Waivers
Waivers.
requested.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman, second by Councilperson Stahl, to approve the conditional use request for 750 South 9th Street with both waivers. Any questions, comments, concerns? No. Seeing none, I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman, second by Councilperson Stahl, to approve the conditional use request for 750 South 9th Street with both waivers. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? And I personally would just like to say thank you very much for coming back, making sure that we could button it up and get it. And I appreciate your patience with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Mhm.
I'll
I
be in
look
contact.
forward-
I'll get the
You're on the clock
decision
now.
out. Yes.
Yeah, now
I will
he's
get
on
the
the
decision
clock.
out as quickly as I can. I promise.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. There we go. Next, on to the workshop. The first item we have is a discussion on electric vehicle charging stations. Barb or Eric, who is gonna lead this?
I think we should just introduce the gentleman.
Okay, go ahead, I don't know.
Trexel?
Back.
Okay. Go ahead.
There we go.
We met with him,
there we go.
2 weeks ago, along with Bill Coy from the Columbia Economic Development Corporation, to discuss, electronic stations, vehicle stations in Columbia. And so take it away.
Hi, my name is Tom Troxel. My company is TXLEV. We are a electric vehicle charging and infrastructure company. And we're based right across the river in New York County. I reached out as kind of piggybacking off of some of the prior conversation. Columbia Borough, along with some of the other river towns in the area here, are a little bit unique in central Pennsylvania in terms of the density of housing in comparison to the surrounding communities and some of the issues that can arise when it comes to residents looking to purchase electric vehicles. As of now, over 90% of EV owners do the vast majority of their charging at home. It's one of the biggest benefits of having an electric vehicle is that every morning you wake up, it's like having a full tank of gas, and your reliance on public charging, if you can charge at home, is very low. You'll only be charging in public if you're going to be driving over the range of your car, and right now that's typically about 300 miles, although there's cars that can go further. Where we run into issues with adoption is in areas if somebody has either no off-street parking or it's not conducive to being able, multifamily housing sometimes to be able to access charging stations. We've been doing a lot of work with municipalities, with other organizations to try to help provide charging services in those areas. As I mentioned, the other sector of charging is public charging, and that's typically what more replicates the gas station model. If you're on a road trip, that's when you want to get in and out as fast as possible and continue on your trip. I believe that Columbia Borough is well situated to provide, if it would be something that was determined, this was an area that collectively, if the residents and the borough itself had an appetite, could do very well servicing one or the other, if not both. The location off of Route 30, currently 30 is an underserved community, corridor for charging. Right now, to access reliable fast charging more than just a station here or there, you have to go further into Lancaster. York right now along 30 is a desert as well. So it could be a good opportunity on one hand to potentially engage with drivers on Route 30, bring more of the public into Columbia. What else is very appealing about that from the other businesses? Every day charging technology gets faster, but right now the absolute fastest cars still take 12 minutes to charge. That's certainly longer than the 4 or 5 minutes for gasoline. And then some of the older technology cars, that's an hour plus, and that does provide a great opportunity. Typically when people charge, they're going to, if they're on a road trip, probably use the restroom, buy food or drink, and generally patronize the community. So there's a lot of economic possibilities there. But the primary driver as well is if there's opportunities, whether it is with a public or private entity, to provide what are called level 2 charging stations, the slower charging stations, that the community could use. Because again, if you do not have access to either off-street parking or, you do have off-street parking, but you're not conducive to running a charger there, you don't have the option to purchase an electric vehicle. And we are very much of the mind that drivers should be able to have as many choices as possible, whether that is diesel, gasoline, electric, other alternative fuels, and it could be potentially could be a good opportunity for the borough. When I first reached out, one of the reasons that I did reach out is there's three main methods of deploying EV charging. The first and most simplistic is just the charging host buys the equipment, they install it, they own it. No different from any other service you provide. It would be no different than somebody, buying a gas station and selling gasoline. One of the drawbacks is EV charging equipment can be expensive for fast charging equipment. Level 2, not so much. And in the early days, there's not as many solidified models to predict an ROI, so it's very understandable when private entities or communities view that as a risk. The other two models kind of keep that into account. The next one is called charging as a service, and a lot of companies offer this. Essentially, they will develop those are some of the recent projects that we've done over the last 6 months or so. Somehow we're in New York, and somehow we do more work in Western PA than our own part of the state right now, which I'm not sure how that happened, but the second one is what's called charging as a service. I don't particularly love that term, but essentially what that is the host of the charging equipment will partner with the charging developer or just a charging manufacturer. They will provide the design, the installation, they'll pay all the costs up front, and then the charging host just has a set monthly rate for the equipment, and then they retain all of the revenue. And the last option, it's not offered a lot, simply because charging companies only want to offer it if it's an area that they know they're going to have a big return. Is a charging company will pay for the installation, will pay for all the recurring costs. There's $0 out of pocket for the private or municipal entity. And then any revenue generated off of the stations, the net revenue gets split up between the charging company who invested into the site, and a percentage will go to the private entity, or there's been municipal cases as well. The last option is something that we are offering to a couple municipalities in the area, particularly more densely populated municipalities, as we believe that to some degree you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is. And we want to invest in our own communities. I just wanted to bring that up tonight and see if there was an appetite or any sort of discussion for, before we wasted anybody's time, if we wanted to discuss offering charging services in one form or another for the residents and the visitors to Columbia.
John, thank you. I have a couple questions for you. Could you explain, I'm gonna say the network, like how people find these charging stations?
Sure.
And also, I think you mentioned it in our small group discussion, you mentioned people can actually book time.
Yes. So most charging stations, home stations are typically considered non-network. They're called dumb chargers, and all they are is a big switch. They just take 220, 240 volt alternating current. When you plug it in, it just allows the current to flow to your car. When they're in public, they're controlled by the network. And really, there's a couple reasons for that. One is that's what allows payment. It's the same as on a gas pump. It knows, hey, your credit card was accepted, and they can, turn that on. The network also allows electric vehicle drivers, especially as of 6-7 years ago, and the early pioneers, 10-12 years ago, there wasn't many stations. So if you went somewhere new, you needed to be able to find those stations. most of the cars themselves have it integrated. The station will talk to the car. So if I'm going to go, for instance, in October, my wife and I are going down to Florida. She has a friend that's getting married. And I'm an over planner, so I typically will just kind of look ahead anyway and decide where I'm going to charge. However, I can just get in the car, put the destination in my GPS. If I'm going to get 400 miles of range, and let's say I'm driving in one day, let's say I'm going to do 1,000 miles of clip, I'm obviously going to have to charge in there twice to make that 1,000 miles. And the car will automatically tell you, it'll suggest where you go based off of which station is going to be the fastest. You can also tell the car, hey, find me the cheapest, find me the fastest, find me the one closest to the highway, so I don't have to get off and exit. There's also a bunch of apps on your phone, and we'd like to, every time we go somewhere new, we like to use that as a way to find new restaurants and new areas to check out. If we're not in a rush, and we'll like to make day trips to towns we haven't been to, whether that's in Pennsylvania or sometimes go to Maryland, just being in the southern part of the state. And we don't always even need to charge, but being in the industry and being a nerd, I like to check out some of the other stations. So we'll plug in and try a new restaurant or check out a shop she saw or something like that. And so you can find them on your phone, you can find them through the car, and sometimes you can just drive around and see them. But either your phone or your car can tell you where they are. And then when it comes to paying for the station, you can actually pay for the charging session. First and foremost, you can pay for it just traditionally. You can use your credit card. If you want to do it in a more integrated way, some people prefer to pay through their cell phones, which you can. And you can also have an account set up with your car. I personally don't like this way, but some people do. You can have it set up that when you plug in, it just bills, you can have a credit card on file, the charger recognizes your car, and you can bill it that way too.
Okay, the second thing, I guess, the areas that I saw where I think it would be a good location, the parking lot off of Bank Street, because that's close to Rose Park, and people use that for activity. So they can charge and ride or walk, whatever they want to do. The second location is out by 30, and that's a private property, but that's the old
Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, the old Chamber of Commerce building. That would be ideal, I think, for a location. But with that being said, does your team come in then and do a study to see if it's feasible or not?
Yeah, so we look at a couple factors. One of the big factors is the lines on the street. What sort of infrastructure is there currently? Now, the type of stations that we'd be looking at for community charging, they're not particularly powerful. Sometimes when people think of EV charging, they get an image in their head of the ultra crazy fast stations that you'll see on the side of the road, and think you need thousands of amps of 480 volt service. However, your average level 2 charger is equivalent to a home electric dryer, and actually a little bit less than an electric range. Now, granted, if you get 4 or 5, and then that can add up a little bit. But your average level 2 chargers are going to be, they can range from a low of about 8 kilowatts, of about 6 kilowatts, up to 20 kilowatts. And to put into some perspective, amperage-wise, on a single phase service, that's going to be about 16 amps up to about 8 amps. Typically, we don't do anything larger for a number of technical reasons on a level 2 than about an 11 kilowatt charger. So when I say check out the infrastructure, it's not a question of is there enough power on the line, because if it's that close that it can't service those, there's much bigger problems going on.
Right.
But it tends to be if we have, let's say you have a suitable lot, and if the power is 2 blocks over and it's all concrete and there's 3 houses in the way, That might cost $40,000 just to bring a pole over there. And then when you add that onto the cost of developing the station, a level 2 charger is much cheaper, but because it's slower and it's designed to serve residents, it doesn't generate near as much revenue. So in that case, you're not going to get that return. Now, in that case, if we'd be looking to develop an ultra high-speed charger, and this is all hypothetical, I'm not saying that's the goal. If we're looking to be a big charging station on the side of the road and we're trying to get as many people off 30 as possible, that sort of investment could be more warranted. That's also a discussion of if that's something that we wanted to do was to bring all those people off 30. And that's when a study to determine, hey, how much power is it PPL here, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. I used to live in Marietta and that was PPL. I wasn't sure where the line was there. But then that's a question when, before you even start looking at it, it's a call to PPL and say, hey, we're looking at about this much capacity. And they'll either say, yeah, no problem, or they'll say, hey, hang on a second, pause the brakes there. In our area, Pennsylvania is blessed. We have a very healthy energy mix. Typically, the generation and the distribution is a problem. The bottleneck that we've seen since COVID started, and it really hasn't got better since then, is access to the proper transformers. Real quick, just to disclose my mind, and one of the things I learned, and I think I know a lot about working in the industry, I'm certainly not an astronomer, but from what I understand, we're in a period of what they're calling a solar maximum, and there's increased, solar flares, and it's a very, very rare, I don't know the odds, 1 in hundreds of thousands or millions of chances that the right solar flare could take out a lot of infrastructure. So utilities hold a lot more of 480 volt transformers in stock in case it happens, so they're less likely to give them out to what they determine discretionary projects. Typically, that's what hospitals run off of, so they like to keep those in hand. But anyway, 480 volt transformers have had delayed a lot of projects, sometimes by a year or two. We've partnered with companies that we have access to charging equipment, DC fast equipment that does not require 480 volt power. So our projects, from once we get a project formulated and get all the check marks in, we typically go from a completed design to people charging within 60 days, absolutely, typically within 30 days. So we like to try to get our ducks in a row and then kind of move quickly. It always irks me when you see sites that started construction 18 months ago and they're sitting there with tarps over them because they're waiting on parts or whatnot. But that is, it's dependent on the project, size and scope. But yeah, we'll look at it for feasibility. Also things, I know with the housing project, are the roads there going to be suitable? Because while most of these would be smaller scale projects, you do have to take into account how many cars could possibly be going back and forth there. Is there going to be a potential shortcut through an alley people might take we're not thinking of? So those are all stuff you want to look at. If the project's designed to serve the community, you want to make sure it's also keeping the community safe too.
And I guess I finally, he did list 3 options: outright buy, basically rent or lease the property, and then basically provide a service. And I told him at the time, I believe that's what we're looking to do, just to provide a service and not take on any responsibility.
And that's the nice part about that, for both the second 2 options, is you don't have the responsibility for the maintenance and the upkeep. And one of the biggest things I've seen about, I know you guys are no strangers to this living here, is when you're near a body of water, especially around here, you're going to get the mayflies, you're going to get the cobwebs, you're going to get keeping all that stuff cleaned off of it. You're also going to have, every now and then, it's rare, but sometimes somebody forgets to connect the handle back. And if it's dark, sometimes paying attention, they might run over that handle. So one of our benefits that we offer, and also being local, is we tend to keep some of those parts in stock. So if we find out, hey, the handle's been smashed in that, it's typically a matter of hours or days till that gets replaced, not down for weeks. Which is, on a larger sense, one of the biggest issues right now, I believe, in the public charging sector is companies just don't always keep up on that. And there's nothing worse, and that's another reason why sometimes if I'm going, for instance, we do a lot of work in Pittsburgh, and I can drive there, but I have to charge by the way back if I don't charge from them out. And I typically go to the same station. It's out of Sheets. It's convenient. I can grab a sandwich. But there's been once or twice where there's 6 stalls at the station where only 2 of the 6 were working. And because of that, there's a line. So typically before I leave, I'll check on my phone and, make sure everything's all in working order. So if I have to make other plans, I can. And I don't believe you should have to do that, which is why I'm passionate about making sure the equipment stays in good working order. A big pet peeve I have is the giant grocery stores. I won't say gas stations, but the giant grocery stores, Columbia, I don't believe has one. But most of the giants in the areas, they have 62 locations, I believe it was. They installed level 2 chargers with Volta. And they installed them all, and they decided to offer the charging as a amenity. So it's free charging. They're level 2 chargers, and they limit you to an hour, so they're not giving out a ton of free electricity. But because there's no monetization on them, they put them in and instantly forgot about them. So it didn't take long until almost none of them worked. That's a situation that it drives me crazy, because if you're somebody on the fence, and they also put them in the front of Giant, they have big advertising screens on them. That's why they put them in for free. They make you parade you by them walking into the store so they can blast ads at you. Well, now you get to walk by and it says out of order. And again, if you're on the fence about getting an electric vehicle and that's what you see, that's going to dissuade you. So we're very passionate about making sure that anything that we install, and some of the stuff, that charger we installed, but some of them we also just took over operators and maintenance contracts for, and we'll give a guaranteed uptime and a guaranteed response window if there is ever an issue.
Eric, were you referencing the charging as a service, that specific technical agreement or technical term there, when you said provide it as a service, or what did you have in mind?
If it was on a borough property, I'm looking just to provide a service, not to make money, not to buy equipment, not to maintain it. Just say, you can use this area to provide the service.
You put it in, you charge whatever you're charging for the electricity.
So more of the revenue share, which was the last technical.
Yes, minimal revenue.
Yeah.
He was looking at the situation where there's no money ever out of pocket on the side.
Sure.
Now, even that, I know you're not looking at it as a revenue generating driver. Now, if you're looking at level 2 chargers, typically charging, by the way, the billing is done per kilowatt hour. And forgive me if I'm dumbing this down. I know some people are very apt in electrical and some not so much. But that's a unit. It would be much smaller, but it would be like how many gallons are in the tank. There's so many kilowatt hours in that. So typically the billing is done by kilowatt hour. Now, level 2 chargers, because they're designed to give a longer, slower charge, they're not going to generate near as much revenue, because the utilization, you can have them plugged in around the clock, they're only going to deliver so much. Those typically are the stations that work well for serving residents of the community. But even if we had 15 of those in, I'd love to say we can lower taxes, you're going to make that much money. All the level 2 charging stations, that's not the case. That can happen on the ultra fast stations. Off the top of my head, I'm just unaware of a suitable area to host that within Columbia. And if the ultimate goal is just to provide access to charging, I don't believe that is even needed or required. Just want to make sure that all the options are on the table.
What style charger do you typically install when in this type of situation where
Sure. Do you mind actually scrolling?
Do you typically install a level 2 or
Yeah, so right here,
DC fast
um,
charging?
for community use, we tend to stay with level 2.
Mhm.
Or we kind of specialize in a weird niche area as well. The difference technically between level 2 and level 3 is level 3, which is the DC fast charging, the key is in DC.
Mhm.
While they tend to be much faster, the key difference is it delivers direct current to the car. And the reason it can be faster is it will bypass the car's onboard charger and gives the energy directly to the battery. AC chargers, and earlier I mentioned, we don't tend to do a lot of 19 kilowatt AC chargers because most cars, their onboard chargers going to max at 11, so most people can't utilize that. There is a kind of a niche area in the DC chargers that have between 20 to 40 kilowatts. So it's not ultra fast, you're not going to be in and out in 12 minutes. But I believe that, and we work in those a lot, because I believe for a lot of use cases and situations, it provides the perfect balance. Where those, depending on the car, because you have a wide range of batteries, those are going to charge most cars in between 45 to 120 minutes. And depending where they can be installed, those can be a good complement for, let's go out to eat, head parties charge, we're going to go out to eat. Your meal takes an hour, you're done charging and you can leave. Whereas if you put an ultra fast charger in, you're going to just be clogging up the space for another 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, and I know I'm kind of going around the
Sure.
long way around here, but I would recommend either, depending on the suitable area, either level 2 charging stations, and those in the Poconos, that's actually like it's hard to tell from the picture, that's a triangular pedestal, and each pedestal has 2 chargers on them. So the level 2 chargers are actually very small, like those boxes are about 12 inches to 12 inches. And sometimes they'll be mounted on up along the wall. So those you can really fit in anywhere, they're easy to get on. So either a level 2 charger like that, or actually if we scroll down to the next one for Air Corporation, that one up on the wall, that's actually a 25 kilowatt DC charger. So it's technically a DC charger. And they definitely have more heft, that's about 250 pounds, but it's still in a small package where if it was a tight area, it can still be wall mounted. You don't need to dig out, 20-foot trenches to add power cabinets and all that kind of stuff. But that would be more what I would recommend. The exact area would, some of those slots, I can look at them a little bit closer and kind of determine what would fit into it better. But interestingly, after we spoke the other week, I went down and checked out the lots along the river, which I do remember Ms. Fisher mentioned that they get packed full sometimes, so that might not be the best area. But as I was down there, there was 2 F-150 Lightnings with trailers on them. So the 2 people were out boating who did tow it there with an electric truck. So it just kind of made the wheels turn. And I don't know if they were local or if they came in from around central PA, but that could fit in well with some of the recreation activities too.
I believe, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, the parking lot at Commerce, there where we have trail parking, would potentially be an option to look at as well for people using the trail and
Yeah,
stopping
the
at
reason,
coffee
the
and
reason I said
cream
the parking lot by Bank Avenue, it's
On-
well lit.
on the other side.
It's well, the river park, our river park closes at dusk.
Yeah, and that is, so that there's certainly some concerns when you're the municipal entity. One of them is there's certain areas you don't want people at certain times of day.
Right.
And while charging can fit in those areas, it typically is best if there's access to it around the clock. That also adds other considerations on the lighting, for instance. If we're gonna put a charging station in, we wanna make sure it's well lit. My litmus test for myself is, my wife can be a little skittish sometimes, is if she had to charge at 1 in the morning, would she feel safe going there? It's kind of the test I try to put. Like for instance, that a charger at Aero Corporation, now that's intended for fleet use, so it's a little bit different, but that's in a dark, dingy corner of an old parking garage that is not well lit, that she'd probably be a little bit skeptical on going in. So those are some things to look at. The other thing to look at as well, which is just something that you guys would have to discuss amongst yourself, is some municipalities look at these programs as a great way of providing charging and also bringing in a small stream of revenue to, just offset some of the time and effort of putting into it. And other municipalities have a different point of view where they don't believe that their place is to make money off of those services. And by extension, don't want another company to come in and doing that as well. So that's a conversation to have amongst yourself. Which is why this is very open forum, and we're happy to discuss any potential ideas. And if we have this conversation over the next 30, 60 days, or however long that happens to be, and we decide there's not an appetite for it, it doesn't fit in well, I'm still just happy that we explored the option and just tried to make sure that we're, looking at all avenues.
Tom, you mentioned the study you did with the police department. Can you just real quick, just describe what you found?
Are you talking about the one I mentioned from Ohio?
I believe so.
We did a village, technically. I don't think we have that as a form of government here. There's a village in Ohio, and they were looking at slowly electrifying their police department, their police vehicles. There were some people who were in favor of it, other people who said, this will never work. The police vehicles, they power a lot of extra electronics, all that kind of stuff. And the village is actually probably, I don't know how many square miles Columbia is, but it would be, I think it's about 1.5, so it's a little bit smaller. But the vehicles have a lot of running hours and very low mileage per year. And that is a situation where EVs absolutely excel. One in the stop and go, because they recapture a lot of that electricity. But even all of those additional electronics on the vehicle, while it is a big draw if your electricity is coming from a small alternator, spinning 12 volts on the car, on the battery, it's a very low draw compared to the size of that traction battery. And I wish I had which I can look up on my computer and send it. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but their frequency of charging, they were worried about having to charge multiple times a shift. And I think it was like once every 9 days is when they had to charge their vehicles, because they were Ford vehicles, and I believe those F-150s and Mach-E's, I believe it was about a 250-mile range, so it wasn't even a particularly long-range vehicle. And the cost savings that the municipality had was through the roof, because like here, they have very cheap power. And for perspective, to fill up the last EV I was driving was a Polestar, which is a Volvo essentially. Just a standard sedan, 80 kilowatt hour pack. I'm paying about 9 cents a kilowatt hour, so it costs me under $80 to fill up the car, get empty to full. Versus probably about $60, $50, $60 right now for gasoline. So there was a significant cost savings. They ended up wanting to do their entire fleet rather than a slow, staggered approach. Now, when you're looking at emergency vehicles, you have to take other considerations. You have to plan for the 1 in a million chance. So you can't ever get in a situation where we can't respond. We don't have, just like you're not going to let all of your patrol cars empty on gas at one given time. So there is thought that goes into how you rotate the vehicles out when and where, and we typically recommend, if it's any sort of emergency responders, regardless the number of EVs in their fleet, to have not, even if slow charging will take care of it 99.9% of the time, we typically like to make sure they have access to fast charging for that 0.01% of the time. That could be a life or death situation. But the other nice thing is another local borough, I don't know if they feel comfortable me saying it by name at the moment, but another local borough, similarly sized area, is currently exploring that option, because a lot of the EV manufacturers right now, their battery warranty, what would be similar to the drivetrain. The engine, there is no transmission, so the electric motor and the battery are typically warranted for 8 years. They're a minimum of 8 years, 100,000 miles. And in some of these areas, you get a lot of engine hours, but you don't get a lot of mileage. So the police departments were able to cycle their vehicles out much less frequently. Typically, they would get cycled out when they would just frankly get so beat up from being used, and they would look like a 200,000 mile car with 30,000 miles on them. But it would save money as well with having to cycle the vehicles less frequently. And because the expensive components on the vehicles are warranted for so long, that they could run them longer. And most of their expenses are just going to be your typical daily maintenance, routine maintenance, which is much less frequent. There's less moving parts. But at 50,000 miles, you might need a set of tires. At 70,000 miles, a set of brakes. But if for some reason, to date, less than 2% of all battery packs have ever needed to have been replaced, but if it does, it's not like dropping the transmission out of warranty. So,
All right, thank you.
It's my understanding that the trend now is to go with hybrid versus purely electric. And I think I heard that Ford is going to discontinue making electric vehicles.
I do some work with Ford. That's not at all correct.
That's what I heard. But anyhow, when I heard this was going to come up, I contacted another municipality that had electric charging stations. And they put them in with a grant from the state, and then they had to put some money in, some matching monies. I think it was $10,000 they put in, and that the state put in, and they put in $3,000 to do it. And what they found was the usage was low. It took up parking spaces because it's dedicated. You can't park another vehicle there because someone may need to park the electric vehicle there. It has to be available. And so they lost parking spaces. And with the revenue they generated, it wasn't worthwhile to do. They weren't making their small contribution to it. And then they got a letter from the state, said that they are now an electric supplier, or I should say a supplier, and they have to pay income tax on it. At that point, they shut them down. Matter of fact, I was told if we can get them out of the ground, we can have theirs. They don't want them anymore because of the problems associated with it. I just think, I think it's something you need to take a hard look at. I understand that Tesla has one plug and other ones have another plug. So how do you get around all these different plugs like that?
They're standardized now. That was the case in 2010 when stuff was new.
And I also am concerned about, and I see this on the news, about fire and the liability associated with it.
Yep. So those are a lot of good points, and I'm happy to address all of them. With the last point, electric vehicles are 67 times less likely to catch on fire versus an internal combustion vehicle. I'm not saying there's zero risk, there's risk in anything. But if you think about it, that's a volatile fluid that you're carrying around that is designed to combust. If combustion cars came out today, if we didn't have 100 years of experience with them, people would be terrified of them.
Well, and the other point of this is, if there was something to this, I would think Sheetz's and Turkey Hills and all of them would be taking advantage of this and have these charging stations.
Sheetz has thousands.
And that we wouldn't have to go and do this.
Again, and what I want to part, there's different types of charging. What Sheetz is doing, what Turkey Hill is doing, they are providing charging. So if you go on a road trip, that's when you need to stop and charge. Now, if you live like myself, I drive almost 40,000 miles per year, all electric. The number of times I charge in public is actually very low. Because, and if you think about it, if your gas vehicle, if your truck had a full tank every morning when you woke up, how often would you go to the gas station? Very little. And the answer is only if you're driving more than a full tank that day. And there are people who do that. So you see, because frankly, there needs to be less public charging stations. It's not going to be a one-to-one versus gas stations. because the vast majority of your charging is done at home or where you reside. If you can't park off street, you don't have that ability, and that's a big thing that we're discussing here. To bring up on your point about another municipality you talked with, that's another reason why, one, we believe a project only makes sense if it can stand on its own merit. If you get a grant or an incentive, that's all well and good, but I have a personal, honestly, disdain for some of the funding on projects like this, because all it does is a bloat. As soon as somebody hears that they get a grant, they get a rebate, everything costs 5 times the amount. And when these projects are executed without somebody who has expert in the field, that's also why you have a lot of municipalities who are very rural. They don't have dense housing, and then they put a single level 2 charging station in the municipality, and there might be 5 homes close to there. The only person who's going to use that is if you work there and you're going to be parked there for 8 hours a day. But you're not going to drive from 8 miles away to plug your car in there when you can't walk back home. You can't go somewhere and do something. There's the municipal building and the cornfield. And I've seen that happen time and time again. The other thing is when you take these government grants, you can no longer, not only does the equipment cost more, because there is extreme criteria on sourcing every component on the equipment, but there's a ton of other criteria. They almost all require union labor. They require a ratio of apprentices to master electricians. They require prevailing wages. They require sometimes you hire a mason for a project, even if there isn't any brick or concrete work. So we've looked at a number of projects where we turned down $200,000-300,000 grants because even with that money, it made the project infinitely more expensive, infinitely longer. And then so you end up in the situations where I'll be the first to tell somebody if charging doesn't make sense in that situation. But we see too many municipalities, too many companies go ahead and get some free money for charging. We only got to match 5%, 10%, 50%, and they put in something that's not going to service. It would be like putting a gas station on an island in the middle of the Susquehanna and being shot cars aren't going to it, except for maybe a random voter. You have to have it in the right situation. I believe Columbia is that right situation, and also we'd be doing this with our own money. We're not looking to get a handout from somebody. We're not asking you to pay for us to put a charging station in. We're saying, hey, this will get used. We'll pay for it. There's nothing out of pocket for Columbia. And
Whoa. You discussed 3 options. That's the third.
That's the third, and that's what I initially offered. In the transparency, I want to make sure that it is known there's 3 major options, and there's additional. I didn't want the borough or any municipality we're with saying, well, no, we just like to own it. No, thank you. I want to let you know those other options exist, and you are welcome to explore those options. But I'm not here soliciting you guys to write a check for me to put charging stations in.
Well, obviously, it's going to be a cost.
The borough, there's nothing, $0, no cost, not upfront, not reoccurring, not ever.
Not bringing the electric to the charger?
That's what we pay for. We pay for, when I say there's 0 cost, you have to provide, that we'll need to make sure that there's access to the spots. And now this is also, by the way, if it's on borough property. We talked about as well, if there's a local business, if there's a local property owner who has an app, say, hey, we'd like to do that. Because the ultimate goal is to provide the community with access to charging. And it doesn't matter who owns the property, whether it's a private entity, whether it's a public entity. And we just believe in investing in our communities and our area. So under no circumstances, we can absolutely set it up, and under no circumstances is there a cost to the borough.
Well, I understand you're trying to sell charger. It's up to them, but I don't think there's.
And again, I'm not trying to sell chargers. I'm looking to sell charging services, but I'm not looking for anyone.
Well, you're going to make money on it.
Hopefully.
You wouldn't be a business.
Well, the thing is, you have to realize in some of these industries, you just got to take some gambles at the beginning, and everybody wants to complain that where am I going to charge? There's no charging stations. And I believe it's time some companies invest in their community and provide these things that need to happen. Frankly, I'm sick of everybody saying, well, it can't happen. One, people don't realize how many chargers there are, because oftentimes they're a box. I frequently talk with people who have 10 or 15 chargers in their town, swear there's none around because they don't notice them. But we are looking to make awareness, we are looking to invest, and we are looking to provide options. Just as I don't think anybody should be forced into an electric vehicle, there is no government mandate, federally at least, not, California's a little wacky, but outside of there, there's no mandate to go electric. But we also believe that if somebody wants to go electric, that they should have the opportunity to do so, and that's what we're looking to provide.
So,
Are you still asking?
well, I was gonna ask, Mr. Bill Floyd
I
something,
was gonna ask him if he wanted to say anything. Bill,
because my question is, from the CEDC perspective, are there people that are looking for this service that are frequenting our shops and so forth?
That's an excellent question, Heather. Initially, my thought process was you're going to capture people coming off Route 30 to recharge their electric vehicle. So you want to have those charging stations in a key location. So if it takes 10 to 15 minutes, they may not want to stay in Columbia, they have to get to another appointment, but at least they can visualize what is here and perhaps say, I want to get back into that now. I saw some new things. I saw the market house, I saw the museums, the antique shops. This interests me, I want to come back. And I mean, you could even take a QR code and put it on the station. And if they don't have time, they can see what's here off their camera. But that would be what I would, if the borough's going to do that, I would make sure that the station is in a key location, not close to the bypass where they can get on and get right off again. I mean, that's the issue you always have with Churchill experience. People come there, they visit, and then they're back on the bypass. We need to get them to come down 3rd Street and into the heart of Columbia.
Well, that's what I was thinking, like, why would we put it out at the old Welcome Center when they can just get on and get off and get right back on? I mean, in my mind, if the whole point is they're gonna plug in and be able to go around and get something to eat or whatever, this lot is the perfect place because it's right in the middle of the downtown. But like the mayor said, are we willing to give up a parking space in a key lot or 2 parking spaces in a key place for things that may not happen? I mean, are we willing to take that?
That's a very, and that's something that has to be decided.
Right.
As well. It's not an overly big lot, so that's a very valid concern. Paid parking lots, I've noticed there's less abuse of people because they're not just going to be, oh, you know what, well, I don't want to find a spot up closer, I'll park here, come back 6 hours later. And if they want to do that, hey, as long as they're paying for it, all well and good. But that is a smaller lot. One of the other concerns as well is the property that adjacent to it. When level 2 stations are a little easier to finagle in there, but we also have to make sure with offsets that we can fit the chargers would be with an offset to the next property. Another consideration in the spirit of what Mr. Cloyd just said was the goal is to bring people in downtown. And in the coming years, with the 462 bridge shut down for a while, I would imagine it's much more likely that drivers, everyone's going to be on 30, and much more likely just to zip through Columbia. So this could be a good way to possibly offset some of that and maybe pull some traffic back in that would otherwise, they might stop at a convenience store or something else before they hit the highway. But now if they're getting on to Wrightsville, they're not going to come through town to do that. And this is early in these discussions, but if we're also looking to bring people off of 30, we're going to want to potentially look, as I mentioned, at least low-end DC charging, because if all we're offering is level 2, that's phenomenal for residents, but that's not necessarily, you are going to get some traffic off of 30 for that, but we have to make sure that the charging experience is going to match the expectations too. So that's just something that, and that's also still going to depend on the situation.
The other thought I have, you're talking there, if you want to increase commerce, how many charging stations are you gonna need? Is one gonna make an impact? I doubt it. Is two gonna make an impact? Probably not. So how many are you really gonna need to increase the commerce?
So, yeah, to some degree, it's, we like to approach projects, scalable and modular. Where, now again, it's going to depend a lot on the area, but, we have some projects we approach that they can support as many as 16 stations. But what we're doing is we're starting with 2. And we might run conduit the whole way down. So if we say, hey, this thing's, they're in use all the time, people are getting annoyed because they're waiting, we can come out and pop more on easier, especially if we ever have to do any sort of trenching. That's where the expense is, the labor, the cost.
And that's what I was getting back to, is what Heather said, this parking lot here is ideal. I'll admit that. But once you start taking 2, 3, 4, whatever parking
Right.
spaces, like 2 parking spaces means a lot in there.
Yep, I agree. And that, because of that, I'm just going to preface it by saying, because of that, that might not be the spot to do it. If that was an area that you wanted to explore, again, because it's paid and something you pay to park in regardless of spots, also be right next to the police station, you can have, the lot, kept an eye on a little bit longer. But you don't always have to have, you have some areas where it'll be marked EV charging only or the car will be towed. But if your aim is to provide service, not necessarily just to make money, you can have it that non-EVs might be limited to 30 minutes of parking. So people can still use this, if it's full, you can still park there, but you can potentially have it that you can prepay for up to 30 minutes, but after 30 minutes, you have to move the vehicle. And again, that just might not be the way to do it, but if that was an area you wanted to explore further, there's other ways that you can look at it. Maybe it'll work, or maybe it won't. But again, sorry, I wanted to address your other point of how many chargers do you need. That's also going to largely depend on what type of charger you're putting in. Because the slower the charger, the longer one car's there. If you have, for instance, a lot of sheets will have 2 fast chargers with 4 ports. So they each have 2 ports, you can charge 4 cars at once. And they'll do 100 to 200 charges every day, because those things are just on and off. They're like a gas pump.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what I'm envisioning for this area, although that's not off the table. So it all depends on how slow of a charge we're looking at. If we're looking at a charger that's going to take 8 or 10 hours and people are going to plug in on convenience to go to a store, you're only going to bring in so many off the highway. So it's about finding that balance, which is why, again, I like to work with those 25 to 40 kilowatt chargers. You can put more in a smaller area, and they're fast enough that people are going to want to go out of the way to use them. If you did, you'll typically get, with good utilization, those chargers, you'll typically get about 5 to 8 charging sessions per charger per day. So on the low end, if you had 5 and 5 sessions, if you had 4 chargers, you're going to be bringing in about 20 additional vehicles per day. And then on the high end, of 8. So 32, so that's what you'd be looking at with a moderate sized hub. And again, you can scale it, obviously, but that would provide a good balance between bringing some additional traffic in off 30 and also providing a hub that's functional for the community, which in my personal opinion should probably be the first objective. We don't want charging at the we want charging for the benefit of the community, not to their detriment, where they're always having, these jerks from New Jersey swooping in and, cutting them off to go to the charging station, so.
I mean, I'm not opposed. I mean, we've already talked about with the River Park Phase 3, when we are finally able to do it, talking about putting in, the infrastructure at that time, even if we weren't looking for the things. But I think at this point, I would like to see more specifics and what are you proposing? Do whatever study you're gonna do and come back and present us with
And
the specifics.
To be able to do a study, that has any sort of actual bearing, based off of real, not just a very high level, here's what maybe could possibly happen, because I could have done that tonight, but it would be all fluff and nothing.
Well, right, that's, I wanna see the meat.
And to see the meat, we would have to identify, even if it was 4 or 5 potential areas. Because in area 7, 8 blocks over, you're going to have a potential different customer who's using that use case. So I can't just do here's what would happen if we put charging in Columbia. That's too broad. And I could just make up numbers at that point because it wouldn't have any bearing on, it could change drastically where we put that. So I guess what I would ask is if there's a couple areas that you wanted me to explore that on, I could give you something of more substance. And that could be on municipal owned land, or that could even be on a private area and say, hey, here's what we're looking at. Do we want to approach this property owner about if this is something that they would like to do? And I recognize that, especially right on the bat, you might not have the answers. Well, hey, let's look here, here, and here. But that's what I would need to give you any sort of an analysis or presentation that's actually worthwhile. If not, it might as well just be absolute 10,000 foot view fluff, because it's not going to be based off of any sort of, except for pulling traffic data and some of that kind of stuff on 30. And one of the other things, by the way, that you have going for you as well is the Harrisburg Airport is actually, for the size and the area of the airport, the rental car operators in that area, and full disclosure, I prior worked for one of them as the director of electrification. When I left 3 years ago, just one of the rental car companies already had 650 EVs dedicated for Harrisburg. And you have about 6 major operators. So you do have a lot of that tourism component. Now, not all of them are coming down south to Columbia. But you are going to also have people coming in, renting a car. When I worked with Eric, shocked me how many people fly into the area to go visit Amish country. But if so, they're going to be down in this general neck of the woods that can be potential customers of the site.
I think what Heather said, it would be nice to have just like this, if your company just did like a general, just a sweep of the town to see potential spots and what customer base, like you said, what customer base would be. Because honestly, if you're going to put longer length charging units for residential and or tourists are going to be here like on the trail for the day, that would make sense to do the lot down here. Whereas if you're going to do the lot out, like Eric brought about the old chamber building, that's going to be more for people that are going to get off Route 30 because they have a need for it. They're going to use it real quick and then they're going to go. And you could, like you said, you could put the QR code there to help promote Columbia, but we're not going to get a lot out of that. So it's two different. So it'd be nice to know what area would be,
and maybe
what
the
would want
answer
what
is
customer.
A little bit of both. Maybe that's
I think it's
the
a mix.
answer as well. But if you want, I can certainly put together some higher level analysis, just looking at different areas, stuff on the town. I just wanted to just make sure that you're aware of that. Until we kind of narrow that scope a little bit, it's going to be hard for me to give you hard facts and figures, because I like to kind of under promise, over deliver. And I don't want to say, well, hey, here's what we're looking at, and then we change it drastically, and it falls short of expectations. So.
Yeah, Todd, I think we owe you some identified areas. I think it makes it easier for both of us.
Yeah,
to understand what we're doing.
I did look at a couple of the areas we mentioned last time around. Some down the lot down by the river, the one park, which there really wasn't much in the way of parking there, and I don't think we should do anything because that would just take it away. The Turkey Hill experience, obviously that could easily host it, but I recognize that you might not be receptive to it, and we still run into that problem with coming off the highway and going right back.
So I'm not looking, again, I'm not looking, to me, attracting people into Columbia is a bonus. I'm looking to provide a service for the people of Columbia. I have had people reach out to me
that look at buying electric cars, but they live in a row home, and obviously they can't run a cord out the front of the house. So I was looking at options.
Real quick, and yeah, if you could just send that in an email, I don't wanna take up too much of the time.
Not to prolong the discussion tonight, but, I mean, there's a lot of potential here. The McGinnis Innovation Park could probably house a couple.
But
The
we're not
National
ready for
Watch
that.
and Clock Museum, they have spaces out there. So,
Let him put it in, let him put it in behind the apartment buildings. I mean, to me, the apartment, I mean, if you're talking about reaching residents and providing it for residents, I would think it would be the people in the apartment here and the apartment down at the bottom of Locust that would be interested in that. I mean, I can't see people that are,
Do some research.
I'll say, I think that the way to start into this, just hearing this discussion, I think the first thing that we should focus on is what lots do we have to offer, and allow kind of an experimental initial phase for you guys to explore those lots. So I would say the one along Bank Avenue, like you said, Eric, I don't believe that this lot back here that we can afford to give up any spaces. So I don't think that needs to be the first lot we do anything in, but there's always room to expand. I think the lot along Commerce, right next to the bridge, we could potentially look at a couple of spaces there, not many, because that fills up as well. But if it would be just a few spaces where we offer the intermediate charging, where people who are using the trail, people who want to come and see the restaurants or whatever downtown, Bank Avenue lot over here is close enough to that to be effective.
Yep.
But to me, to focus on it as a project to provide for our residents as like a whole bunch of level 2 long-term charging, like more of the for the residential people who want to get into having an electric car, that seems like it seems to be to me that it would be better to focus on that later on, because it's too complex, too much capital investment on the front side to reach everyone. And so we'd really be focusing on a small area. But I think also if we would get a few in and kind of get the ball rolling, then some of the local investors and property owners of these, larger residential units could possibly follow the drift and get their parking lots outfitted as well.
The right track with that. And sometimes it's about getting one in, getting two in. And a lot of people, when they see it in their community, they feel better about making the purchase. And start small and then kind of expand in the direction that the feedback you're getting. And maybe the answer is you don't expand it. My gut tells me it would probably need to be expanded, and you can kind of drive where that goes, whether that's from the developers doing it on their own, whether that's from public lots or however that happens to be. But you can, it might be, hey, these intermediate chargers are great, let's just put in 4 more. Or it could be, hey, I really think the next thing we need to do is just try to work with some local housing developers about getting the chargers added. And one of the reasons why I think timing is right now is the affordability of EVs is now, the average new electric vehicle is now below the average new car purchase price, mainly because of our appetite for F-150 limiteds in high countries and driving that price up. But there's, you can buy a whole bunch of used EVs with a 200-mile range for under $10,000 now. So the cars are accessible to people on moderate incomes. It's not 15 years ago when if you had an EV, because you're doing very, very well for yourself. So we're starting to hit that point where your average person, it's within their grasp, and that's why the timing's right to have the conversations that we're having.
All right, so who on council is going, Eric, are you gonna take this on and drive this, or?
I can.
Okay,
I can reach out.
Yeah, I'll send height, and obviously this isn't anything that's on any sort of a strict timetable. Whenever you get a chance, shoot that over and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, and the next workshop item, discuss the possibility of issuing an RFP for single waste hauler for the borough. I think, I remember distinctly, Jake and I were standing in Tammy's office like the week before she left, and Laurie said, yeah, Gamby's retiring. We didn't get our official letter yet, but that's a thing now for like a couple of weeks. And Jake and I both looked at each other, and I said, is it time? And he said, I think it's time. And the next week, Leo came up to me, the mayor came up to me and said, I think it's time. Kelly contacted me and said, I think it's time. So, we had not been doing this purposely because we all liked our local haulers. And we wanted to see them stay in business. And now with both of them out of the game, we're wondering if this is the time to discuss the putting an RFP out. In the packet, I did put a spreadsheet that shows recent costs to residents, and what they ended up paying after, for the RFP or after the thing, what they are. I also have several of the actual RFPs from different places. I have Ephrata Borough, West Earl Township, I think I have Mountville, just to get us thinking about the questions that we want to answer, that we would want to answer, that we would want to put in the bid, because there's lots of different things that we could do. But first and foremost, is this something that we wanted to explore?
Does everybody have to use it?
That would be it, yes.
Yeah, that's why you have to be borough-wide.
One of the problems, and one of the problems we've faced for years here. First, let me say, we had several local haulers, and they went back generations, and they provided service to the community. They provided jobs to a lot of folks here in the community. So that's one reason why we always looked at it and said, why would we take business away from a business or put a local hauler out of business? And now the time, as you said, Heather, the time's right. One of the biggest problems we've had code enforcement wise all these years was the ordinance said every property had to have a hauler. We would get notices from our local haulers, and they did a wonderful job. They would come in and say, hey, so-and-so hasn't paid their bill for a couple of months. I stopped collecting. You better go check it out, because they don't have a hauler. And a lot of times we'd find out trash was stacked up in the backyard, in the alleyways and things like that there, because they didn't pay. Then you would go to the landlord. If it was a rental property, the landlord would say, well, it's their responsibility. I own the property, but in my lease, I put it that they have to pay for the trash and all. So it was a constant hassle code-wise with collecting trash. And then to Mr. Grob's comments, with a single hauler, you can set out what you want them to do. You want to pick up trash in certain areas, certain days, or the whole community in one day, or whatever, maybe square it off into 4 different zones or whatever have you. And then you can set up that plan for your parks, your downtown, and see what what you have in the downtown. You know, do they need to pick it up every day? Quite possibly. You know, if they're gonna be operating, if it's gonna be one hauler or maybe multiple trucks in town, there's not much trouble to hit Locust Street and a couple of the side streets every day and clean that trash up. And that'll take care of some of those problems. That's one of the things I'm really looking forward to. And if every hauler if everyone has that same hauler, there's less problems with them putting trash in the public receptacles rather than in their own trash
Then you have to
can or
go on,
whatever have you in the rear.
you don't have to go on a hunt, who has what hauler.
Right,
When
right.
you try to cite them.
You don't have to go
There's
hunt.
one
It's-
hauler for everybody.
You don't have
There's so
to-
many benefits to this.
Well, and you don't have to worry about, oh, this building has this hauler, this building has this hauler, so it could be one block has trash out every day of the week, and there's no way for our codes to know, are they, is it out there, like, what is their day without, I mean, it's so much easier.
The benefits are unlimited to doing this. I would,
But one of the things I hope should come out of it, there should be no reason for somebody to throw the trash in the backyard, other than being lazy slob and,
yeah.
you know, there's no reason to do it. Just put your stuff out the curb. You know, it's gonna be, every property will have to be in on it. It's, like I say, it's, you know, I would do it as part of the tax bill. That's what, it's always been done anywhere I lived before.
Well, no,
This is the
I'm
only
gonna-
place.
no.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I will tell you, it may cost a little bit more for the residents. I would highly suggest
I'm
that
just-
you make the billing entity
Be
the
that.
whoever the
Yes.
trash company is. We do trash liens in a couple of our municipalities. One of mine
Okay,
specifically, they do, and I can tell you it is not very fun. It ends up costing because there's really no way. It's very hard to collect on those liens, simply because it's not like you could shut someone's water off. And so it's more trouble than it's worth to
My concern
try to do that.
is that, you know, like on the one hole, you don't want to still have that loophole where somebody doesn't pay their trash and now they're not gonna pick it up.
That
I
that's
think the
normally
answer to that is, I think you should require a report from the
A
hauler.
notification,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay?
Mhm.
If so-and-so doesn't pay within say 2 months in arrears,
Yeah, most.
they contact the borough and the borough goes to find out what's going on.
yeah. But
Well,
I mean
and that
that's
we can put that in as a code thing,
exactly.
that we've been notified they haven't paid
Yeah.
the trash bill.
And you can put that in the contract. That I will say, I don't generally have. They'll still generally pick up the trash. We have not had that problem where there's trash building up because the trash company says I haven't gotten paid. They will. You need to tell them that they have to essentially keep picking up the trash, and then they can collect however they decide to collect.
But they could contact us and we could say, hey, you know, you
Yes.
need to start
Yep.
ponying up.
Yeah.
And one sec, and, the other thing we can put in the RFP, just reading through the different ones, I mean, we can stipulate that it's just residential or it's residential and business. We can stipulate how many, that if it's over X number of units, they don't have to participate. If that's a thing,
If they provide you with
if they
alternative,
provide with, you
yeah.
know, whatever.
Yeah.
We can also put in the RFP if we want the company to provide toters for everyone. If we want, we can also say, in these places, we want you to pick up out back because they're not able to get their cans out on the front. We want you to pick up from the alleys. I mean, these are all things we can say in the RFP.
Some of the trucks today can't get down the alleys. but-
Well, right, but no, that's what I'm saying, that, if we can specify that, you know, so in those places where they can't get the can out front because of the small alley, the small walkways, the small breezeways or whatever, maybe then we say they pick up out back.
So how do we decide who the hauler is and will it include recycling?
So what we would do is we would put out an RFP, like Heather said, and it will have, I mean, we do this probably 20 times a year in our municipalities. it's a list of here are all the requirements, just kind of like the things that Heather,
Yep.
you know, how many days a week you want, whether you want recycling service, all of those, whether you want a toter, all of those types of things. And then, you know, you give them a period to put in their bid, and normally you ask for kind of a total price and then you know, like a price per unit breakdown, like Heather has in this spreadsheet. And then you guys would make a decision as to whether, you know, who you want to accept that bid from. It's just like any other project that you have to bid.
And people who are taking the trash out now would be eligible.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
anyone could.
Yep.
And I mean, at that point, we can also stipulate how often we're gonna rebid it. Is this a 1-year contract? Is it a 3-year contract?
Yep.
You know, whatever.
Yeah, I would say we often do 3-year contracts with 2 options to renew, because as you see on this sheet here, right, the price of trash collection has doubled and in some cases tripled in these municipalities in the last 5 years. And so having a little bit longer contract, if you're happy with that service where you can extend for a slight increase versus a doubling of the price, is always a good thing.
The other thing we would have to think about is who pays for the tonnage?
The
The hauler or
Yeah.
the municipality? Which I would say the hauler is paying the tonnage.
I think
So,
you have a-
all right, yep,
I thought I was gonna be, whatever.
Yep.
Just elaborate on what you said. I have seen large trash companies not empty dumpsters. I've watched it with my own eyes, so what you said is known to what I don't buy. People, they
What do
do
you-
not, they will let your trash sit. I've seen it. Small carriers and large.
I'm not sure I
Another
understand what you
question
mean.
I had was, will the borough be hauling this, or will you be hiring a company?
a company. We're gonna ask a company,
Now, at that, is the company gonna be billing the individual customer? Or
yes,
is the borough gonna have their hands in it first?
no,
Okay.
that's what I said.
So then
I
that's
want them to do
eliminated a
the
lot of your
billing.
questions.
Yeah, I want them to do the billing,
There
I
you
want them to haul it. That's
That
what
answers
we
your
specify,
questions on the tonnage, then it's up to the company.
and that's what I'm saying, that we need to specify in the RFP.
Right.
Do we want them to pick up even if they don't pay their bill? That's all,
And like he said, you know what I mean, about after 30 days or 60 days.
right,
that the code officer would be, you know, notified to say, hey, you
Yeah.
know.
But yeah, I mean,
400
that's-
the 400 block of Locust Street hasn't, whatever, 500 block or whatever address hasn't picked up their trash.
I mean, I know so many people say, oh, but we want the choice, we want the choice, we want the choice. But at the same time, then they also complain that our taxes are high, why can't we get any relief? If you go down through here and you're looking at the cost per unit,
What's per
You're-
unit?
huh?
What's per unit?
Yeah, what is per unit?
Per
dwelling unit.
per
each-
dwelling unit, like,
Yeah,
uh,
normally,
So
each-
what's
per
that?
home.
that would be like
I
a
know
single
what.
family home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's like $25 a month, which,
Wait a second, you have unit fee and then you have annual cost to resident.
mhm.
What's the difference?
so,
some of them have different things for a business versus a resident versus a multi-family, like a multi-unit.
And-
It's all in there different,
yeah, and the way the unit price would be calculated, you're always gonna have a little bit extra in what actually goes out to the residents, largely because of like picking up dumpsters at the park and things like that. So you'll have a little bit higher cost, you know, going out to them. And as well, you have to round up a little bit just to make it even, is what a lot of these do. You can see there are a lot of even numbers in there. That's how it normally works.
So you're saying now that the residents are gonna pay for the borough to empty the trash in their parks?
As part of the contract, that's a lot of, I'm not saying that you guys have to, that's how a lot of them work.
mhm.
Um,
But again, like Evan said, we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So like here,
Andy used to empty the trash cans on Locust Street. He would ride by, if there was trash in it, he would dump it. He would go to the next.
Well, yeah, I know, we paid him for that.
I understand that. That's what I'm saying. You paid it.
here in
The
Mary,
borough paid it. We did.
sorry, excuse me. In Marietta, like the 2024 unit fee, it says it's 199.51, but then the annual cost to residents is 336. So that's quite a bit different. And the next three lines down through there, it's similar. And would you say that's primarily because the residents are then picking up the cost of the extra
No.
services?
No,
And
I'm not
Or
sure.
why is that so
Honestly,
different?
I
The
don't know.
per unit cost also sometimes is when you divide up, if you have apartment buildings specifically, those are not, you might have 10 units in an apartment complex. And so that will lower your per unit, right? You have one owner of that apartment complex,
Mhm.
right? One resident, if you will, but that will lower the per unit cost if each person doesn't have like a toter out, right? If they have one dumpster that gets serviced by the
Sure.
trash company.
But then why is it higher? You would think it would then, is it an average or they're
Mhm.
averaging out the
Mhm.
annual cost to residents as
Correct.
an
Yeah.
average?
Yep.
So
I
for
believe so. I
some
didn't-
residents would be paying more than others?
I'm
That's
not
a good
sure.
question, actually.
Yeah,
And I guess my main concern is, are we going to end up paying more for trash removal as residents of the borough because we don't have the competition of haulers?
honestly,
The
when-
economies of scale.
when,
Yeah, economies of scale.
Yeah.
honestly, when municipalities have gone to a single hauler, they have seen an overall decrease in cost.
Because you do have the competition because it's competitively bid. Right.
Right.
That's when the competition, and then you can, you always, almost, no matter what, you're going to rebid it every 5 years or so. So there's always that,
Right, but on the other hand, like traditionally, we've had how many haulers? 3? So
No,
7 you had at one point.
You have
seven.
7,
Eight.
yeah.
currently, how many do we have?
8.
8. So let's just say those are 8 companies that are geared up. They have all the equipment necessary for hauling trash in this borough. But if you're a company, these are just questions I want to understand. So like if we're going down to one company who's hauling in this borough, they're going to have the trucks necessary to haul the entire borough.
Yep.
So then if you're a company who's hauling trash and you want to put a bid on, if you get that bid, one company is now going to have too much equipment for the area and the other company doesn't have. So I don't necessarily see it being the same competition. I'm not saying there's no competition,
Well,
but I don't see it being the same from that perspective.
the companies we have, we're not the only place they pick up
Yeah,
trash.
Right.
So if they're not using a truck here, they may be using it, they're gonna use it somewhere else.
Right, I know, but they have to have the equipment for every contract they have.
Yes,
They have
they
to
do.
fulfill their obligations. So
Yes.
I'm just saying, right now, we have 7 companies or 8 companies that they have whatever they need
Mhm.
to give and take customers, who are switching back and forth between haulers on a regular basis. You're always going to have people switching every now and then versus once every 5 years. That's a much different scale of business decision.
Well, there's a lot that goes into business decision too, because, a lot of haulers are gonna be more centrally located to Columbia than versus, I have goods now just by default because that's who Gamby sold out to. Well,
Right.
goods is in Ephrata.
Mhm.
They want to be running down from Ephrata every day to pick up trash. I don't think so, but, it might be more advantageous for somebody closer, like there's a couple that are, 15
Well, they're
miles.
running
I
they're
know,
running
I'm just saying.
Gamby's equipment.
I
So
know.
my guess is they purchased
I know.
the equipment and keep it here local.
You guess, but there's no guarantee.
We're
I'm
gonna
not saying,
go here
I'm not
first.
guaranteeing,
I'm sure
no.
they're using him somewhere else too, though.
I think I know the answer to your question about why the one's higher than the other. Some of the municipalities bill the residents, like the trash company bills the municipality, and the municipality bills the residents, and they have a markup between the two. That's why it's higher.
Okay.
That does happen, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's your difference.
Gotcha.
And to answer about the concern of having enough equipment to do everything here, I'd be happy to meet with council and the mayor to see a way of how we can start a company to solely serve this community. My business partner and I are looking at doing a trash company. This has been a long time coming. This is just happenstance that they're here, but the mayor talked about providing jobs to the community. That would be our goal. It's something we're looking to do in Lancaster City. I'd be interested in at least having a meeting to see what your goals are as a borough and see what we could do to meet those goals.
What is your name?
Austin Mountain.
Austin?
Mountain.
Okay.
Mary,
Heather,
yes,
my question is from the resident perspective. I know that what's happening with the trash haulers is they bill by how much you put out. Like,
some do, some don't.
my neighbor who had gamblers just got billed by goods that she was putting out 4 bags of trash a week. She puts out 1. I don't even fill a 32-gallon bag, so what is there going to be?
Well, and that would
as
be,
far as-
that would
Yeah,
be, that would be in the RP.
Yeah,
How much is a person going to be allowed to even put out?
and that is absolutely part of the RFP, and
Yeah.
I'll use the example of my home township, Paradise Township over in York County. They were having problems during the pandemic with service from various haulers, and so they went to a single hauler contract, and they allowed some residents to essentially have a reduced rate because they only put out a kitchen garbage bag of garbage every week, right? I will say that didn't work super well, largely I think because people started to take advantage of that. And they use Republic Services there, and they were not real happy about doing that at the beginning anyhow, but they did, and they've transitioned off of that since. But normally it's a standard amount for every single person, and you can put up to that amount in, but if you put less, there usually is not a discount, but that's something that we could certainly work on, yeah.
Financing flow.
Yep, that's all part of it, absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
The other thing, like, what happens if, the service provider that we would, decide to, hire or whatever, what if they turn out to do not so great a job, and we have a contract signed with them for X amount of years or whatever, what would happen then?
We would have it.
That's why you have me.
Yes, that's why we have a solicitor and exit clauses in contracts.
A lot of things need to be covered.
Mhm.
Yep.
What?
Go for the RFP.
Because if we issue an RFP, nothing says we have to do it then. It's just exploring.
I think once you get your RFP together and it gets out there, you're gonna hear from the haulers, and they're gonna tell you through their experience, some of the things quite possibly that you wanna do. This or that, hey, this is how we do it, we found out this is best.
Yep.
We have a senior citizen discount for 1 bag, all kind of things like that.
Yep.
that Come up.
I mean, really, the density in Columbia,
You should get it.
we should get a good price.
Yeah, you can go up the street,
Boom, boom, boom.
and wipe that whole block out.
Mm-hmm.
How
I know.
many days a week do the trash haulers normally, is it
Well,
one?
They
normally?
are allowed to pick up 4 days.
Okay.
So they.
But I
would
mean, for
set
each
their own-
resident, like if you have
Oh, one.
once a week, okay, gotcha.
I mean, that's the other thing we could say. Do we want them to pick up more than 1 day?
A week, yeah.
a
Bicycle
week.
picks up twice a week. Now they do the run.
Mhm. You know, but, you know, do we just wanna cut the,
What you're gonna see then,
but yeah,
one of our local haulers offered to work with you folks to help you out on this RFP ideas of what you need to do. Their suggestion was to break the community up into 4 pieces.
Yep.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
yep. So. Do we wanna, have Evan put together an RFP?
I guess to start with.
Yeah, I can get a draft together
Yeah,
pretty
is
quick.
there anything specific that anyone wants to see in it? Mine is, they do the billing. I don't wanna
You don't
be
want
involved in that. That's, we'd have to add staff,
Yes.
and I don't wanna do that.
It is. It's not worth it to do that to be a pass-through entity, essentially.
No, it's
Yeah.
not.
As long as we know who isn't paying.
Yes, and we want them to be able to let us know who isn't paying.
I can tell you they're normally happy to provide that information. Yeah.
And
Maybe you could start with like standard ones and then we can. tweak
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I could give you 5 examples tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, I just figured if anyone had anything specific they were already thinking,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
it's better to let them know that now.
Yeah, it makes sense to break the town up into zones, because it's a lot to hit from
Yep.
one day, yeah.
And Austin, if you have a business card or you want to email one of us with your contact information, that would be great.
Oh, your idea.
All right, anything else on this? Yes, Frank?
Don't you think it'd be smart to have a meeting with all the residents and get all their input? How does anybody know what was on the agenda? I don't know how these,
It's
I don't know how they knew.
Word of
What
mouth.
about all the residents? Don't they have a say in this?
This is a publicly advertised meeting, Frank.
Right.
With an agenda that goes out in accordance with the Sunshine Act,
If
right?
the
I mean, we
public
could certainly, I'm not saying this is the only time you need to discuss this, but
No, I
they
mean,
are
we're gonna be
absolutely
discussing
somewhere.
it more.
Yeah.
It's a publicly advertised meeting, but until they see something like this, how do they know what's on the agenda?
Well, that's
I
why,
bet I can go to any of my residents up there I live with, they don't know nothing about this.
I know several people that don't know anything.
Absolutely.
You gotta start,
So,
well, that's,
You gotta
I
start
don't know what else
somewhere.
we're supposed to
So-
do.
we didn't say we're doing it
We're not
tonight.
saying we're doing it tonight, Frank. We're
Well,
talking
I'm
about, do we want to put together an RFP to bring it back to talk more?
But you would have more input from the people if you would advertise to them that say, here's what we're talking about. It was nice that everybody had their say, but how about the other thousands of people that don't have a say because they didn't know it was being talked about?
But don't those thousands of people look at the agenda on the Columbia Spy on Facebook?
Hell no,
Everybody
they
on
don't read. They don't know how,
Everybody on
they
Facebook.
don't even know how to get on the spy or get on the agenda.
So how, Frank, are we supposed to
Hand deliver.
are we supposed to go and hand deliver an agenda to every resident before every meeting? How are we?
There's gotta be some way of notifying the people that here's what we're talking about.
It
is. It's on the
website.
It's a public advertising.
Posted right out there.
This is it. It's posted on the door,
Yeah.
24 hours before the meeting.
How many people even walk in that office to see that on the
But you
door?
know
But how
what?
many people ever tuned in on YouTube to even watch it, Frankie? You can't control that.
I know.
It would have been nice.
If people are interested, they're going to look for it.
You can't.
If they're interested in what their government is doing, they're going to find out. If they're not,
If I wanted to put the agenda up, I knew nothing about
That's the point.
that's
it.
That's the
I
point.
just feel
I
it's a
mean-
very important issue that, the people should have their input and learn about. you
well,
know?
and now when they see it in the municipal briefs and they hear it, then they'll say, oh, I'm gonna keep looking out for that meeting when we're gonna talk about that.
Are you gonna bring it up again then?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
He's gonna provide us with RFPs to
to
pick
look
and
at
choose
it.
from.
And then chances are, we're gonna discuss it again another time before we say yes or no.
I'm sure they
Yeah,
have-
probably the end of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, this could be months, Frank, it's not once and done.
Going back, Heather, I don't think there's anybody in here that remembers when we had single haulers, that the borough paid the tab. The borough picked up the tab. In your research, like Effort or any of the other ones, ask them, is there any municipalities that picks up the tab for this from Dollar General Fund, and then I'm sure there is. I'm sure Columbia did that years ago.
it is possible to do. I have one who does it, and why I said what I said about having the hauler do the billing is because of that experience. They have, I mean, it's a very small borough, but out of the 300 or so households that they have, normally they have to try to collect on about 70 to 80 of those, right? Which is a huge, because they pay the trash hauler, the municipality pays the trash hauler a lump sum at the beginning of January and at the beginning of July.
I think what Frank is saying is paying for it and not getting a monthly payment from the resident.
Yes,
You don't
that's
pay
exactly
nothing
what
from the resident.
So
I think it was
if that's
done
the
like that,
case,
Heather.
if that's the case,
You just raise taxes.
we would raise taxes to pay for that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To me, that, just talking about it's a fair system, but I'm not sure how that worked years ago.
Administrative.
I remember that.
That's a nightmare, because then what you're gonna have is, you're gonna have the single person that lives beside Mary would puts out one bag, helping to offset the cost of that apartment building and that apartment building, which are generating infinitely more trash than the one bag.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know how it worked,
Yeah.
but I know we had it and they did away with it. They got the single haulers. Where the 8 people come in or whoever it was, but I know it was, we had it, but
So,
there's gotta be other municipalities that have it, probably more than the one, and just ask them, hey, how is it working? Just as a research.
well, I did a lot, and there are some that do their own billing, but most do not do that anymore, because it is a hassle.
That was back in the 50s.
Right.
It was
You
back,
had a
it
single
was way
hauler,
back.
it was called a garbage man.
Yeah.
And then everybody burned and had a burn barrel, so they burned all the stuff down that goes into Main Street. That's how that happened, so the amount of garbage was like, yes, and Grimm's did it.
Yeah, you wrap it in newspaper.
Yeah,
You had to wrap it in newspaper.
What
So,
did you say they called it?
Grimm's was the name of the hauler.
so Frank, tell your friends,
Over in Elm.
tell your friends to keep an eye out over the next couple of months for the agendas that we talk about this, and they can come in and give their thoughts.
I'll get one of them, is it a bell horn, and I'll
Yep, go
walk
ahead,
down the street.
do it, do it.
All right.
All right, anything else? Leo, just stop, okay? All right, Borough Council comments. Councilperson Stahl,
It's 9:30. I'm
a little punchy? I am.
I'm finished with my comments for tonight.
I would just say that this trash hauling thing is being blown way out of proportion, what it should be. When I moved here in 2002, I was already married 22 years. First 22 years of my marriage, we lived either in Reading or in a Muhlenberg Township. That is who collected our trash. When I came here, oh, you mean I gotta get my own hauler? I didn't know that. You know what I mean? This is the first time, I've been doing it for 22 years now, but I mean, coming here, this was a new experience. Every other place it was part of your taxes. So, it can be done.
Councilperson Kaufman. Councilperson Fisher.
One thing, Dale, you can't leave.
You can't leave.
That's all.
All right, I have nothing else this evening. The next meeting at 7 PM on Tuesday, September 10th, council will hold a no, I did have one thing I wanted to say. Check if you are interested, there is going to be a public meeting coming up this month with PennDOT on the 462 bridge project. The information is on their website. I'm not sure when it is. I want to say the 13th, but I don't think that's right.
How are all the people gonna know?
Yeah, I know. So I need to get that information and link it on our website. But yes, there is going to be a public meeting this month on the 462 bridge project. And further details can be found on the PennDOT website. Again, at 7 PM Tuesday, September 10th, council will hold a regular meeting. This evening, we are going to adjourn to an executive session to discuss personnel matters related to replacing staff. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilperson Murphy, second by Councilperson Kaufman, to adjourn at 9:35 PM. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? We're adjourned. Cut the feed.
He left these.
Will return.